They say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, but what they don't tell you is that hell also hath a meticulous spreadsheet and a team of very good lawyers. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is, where you are now. My name is Margaret Henderson, and for most of my life I was content to be overlooked. A quiet widow from Cedar Falls, Iowa, living a simple life on my late husband's pension, or so everyone believed. I drove a sensible sedan, lived in a modest house, and never once drew attention to myself. This suited me just fine, because while everyone assumed I was simply getting by, I was quietly building something else entirely. For 15 years, ever since my dear Arthur passed and left me with a sizable life insurance payout, I had been nurturing a hidden talent. I invested, not in anything flashy, not in schemes or fads, but in solid, long-term, diverse portfolios. I researched every stock, every bond, every real estate opportunity with the dedication of a scholar, often late into the night, poring over balance sheets and market trends. My accountant, Robert Chen, was the only person who truly knew the extent of my financial success, quietly confirming my net worth had grown from a comfortable $300,000 to a staggering $3.8 million. Later, it would exceed $4.2 million. But to the outside world, I was just Margaret, a sweet old lady who baked excellent apple pies and volunteered at the local library. My son Tyler was my world. He was a good boy, kind-hearted, perhaps a little too trusting, and a little too eager to please. When he told me he had met Jessica Walsh and that he was head over heels in love, my heart swelled with happiness for him. He deserved all the joy in the world. He deserved someone who saw his worth, not his potential for being molded. But even then, a small, quiet voice in the back of my mind whispered a warning. The Walshes, Jessica's family, were, for lack of a better word, ostentatious. They lived in a sprawling colonial mansion in West Hills, a place Jessica referred to as the estate. They drove luxury cars, hosted extravagant parties, and spoke with an air of inherited superiority that grated on my quiet sensibilities. Her parents, Patricia and Gordon, seemed to view Tyler and me not as family, but as a charity case, a project, something to be tolerated, perhaps even managed, but certainly never respected as equals. The condescension began subtly, like a persistent hum beneath the surface of polite conversation. At our very first dinner at their estate, Patricia, a woman whose smile never quite reached her eyes, quizzed me about my little house in Cedar Falls. "It must be so quaint," she purred, after living in a bustling place like, well, wherever you came from before. I had lived in Cedar Falls my entire married life, but I simply smiled and nodded. Gordon, a booming man with an ego as large as his waistline, spent the evening regaling us with tales of his empire, his multiple car dealerships, his chain of restaurants, his impressive real estate holdings. He spoke of the Riverside Shopping Center development as if it were his personal kingdom, a truly lucrative venture, he boasted, with projected returns of over 300%. Tyler, bless his heart, listened with wide-eyed admiration, taking mental notes. I listened too, but my notes were far more strategic. Jessica, meanwhile, was obsessed with the wedding. Every conversation revolved around floral arrangements, catering options, and guest lists that seemed to number in the hundreds. At one nothing-fancy dinner they hosted, which of course was anything but, Patricia began discussing the wedding budget. She turned to me, her perfectly manicured hand resting lightly on my arm, and said with an air of genuine sympathy that chilled me to the bone, "Now, Margaret, we understand your limitations. We're not expecting you to contribute equally, of course. We know your circumstances are different, dear. It's lovely that you're even able to join us." Jessica chimed in with a dismissive wave. "Oh, Mom, please, it's fine. We'll manage. Tyler and I just want his family there, even if it's a bit modest." That was the moment. The limitations, the modest, the unspoken understanding that I was a burden, a lesser than, someone whose presence was a gracious allowance rather than a welcome addition. It wasn't just the words. It was the casual cruelty, the entitled assumption that they understood my life better than I did. My blood ran cold, but I kept my smile in place, my gaze steady. I felt a transformation begin inside me, the kind, quiet widow started to recede, replaced by something much sharper, much more formidable. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting my son from a family that would perpetually diminish him, that would see him as nothing more than a convenient accessory to their own grandeur. The next morning, I initiated what I internally dubbed Project Education. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. It was about justice. It was about teaching a lesson in true worth, in dignity, and in the consequences of treating others with such casual disregard. First, I met with Robert Chen again. We reviewed my entire portfolio, confirming the numbers, identifying liquid assets. Then, I called Sarah Mitchell, a corporate attorney I'd heard good things about through my investment circles, known for her discretion and her ruthless efficiency. I outlined my objectives. I wanted to understand the financial landscape of the Walsh family, specifically Gordon's holdings, and I wanted to establish a new entity, a company that would operate entirely independently, but with Tyler at its helm, financially secure and beholden to no one. My investigation into the Walshes began in earnest. While they projected an image of old money and booming success, I had a hunch it was all smoke and mirrors. My hunch was right. Sarah, with her team of private investigators and financial analysts, uncovered what I had suspected. The Walsh empire was, as the saying goes, house rich and cash poor. Their sprawling estate was mortgaged to the hilt. Gordon's car dealerships were carrying enormous debt. His restaurants were barely breaking even. His real estate holdings, particularly his stakes in the lucrative Riverside Shopping Center development, were heavily leveraged, relying on a delicate house of cards that could easily tumble with the right nudge. They were constantly on the brink, maintaining their lavish lifestyle through a dangerous cycle of borrowing and expanding, hoping the next big deal would pay off before the last one came crashing down. The very developments Gordon boasted about, the ones he relied on for his retirement, were their Achilles heel. I even learned that the country club land, where Patricia hosted her endless charitable luncheons and society events, was not owned outright, but on a long-term lease with an option to buy that was about to expire. This knowledge was power. I instructed Sarah to begin the process of liquidating $500,000 from my most accessible assets. This wasn't a reckless move. It was a strategic investment in Tyler's future. With those funds, we established Henderson Investment Properties, a discrete limited liability company. On paper, Tyler Henderson was the managing partner, granted full autonomy and ownership of his shares. In reality, I would be guiding him, setting the strategy, and providing the capital. This company was designed for one purpose: to methodically and legally acquire control of key commercial developments, starting with the very ones Gordon Walsh was so proud of, the ones that were so vulnerable. While my preparations unfolded in secret, the Walshes continued their relentless campaign of subtle digs and overt manipulation. Gordon approached Tyler with a grand offer, a sales manager position at one of his premium car dealerships. "A huge opportunity, son," he boomed, clapping Tyler on the back. "A chance to learn the ropes, get your foot in the door of real business. Of course, it's commission-based, so you'll have to earn your keep. And it would be much more convenient if you moved closer to West Hills, wouldn't it?" He made it sound like a gift, but I saw through it immediately. It was an offer of dependence, a way to keep Tyler under his thumb, beholden to his generosity. Tyler, still somewhat naive, was excited, seeing it as a sign of acceptance into their world. My heart ached for him, knowing the trap that was being set. Jessica, meanwhile, grew increasingly demanding about the wedding. She insisted on a specific designer gown for herself, a monstrously expensive one, and hinted strongly that my simple little pearl necklace, my grandmother's pearls, appraised at a surprising $15,000, simply wouldn't do for the mother of the groom. "It's just not statement enough, Margaret," she said with a pitying look. "You really should get something new, something that matches the grandeur of the day." I smiled, fingering the worn pearls, and simply said, "These have always suited me just fine, dear." Every interaction chipped away at Tyler's initial excitement, slowly revealing the true colors of his fiancée and her family. He started to look at me with a newfound appreciation for my quiet strength, a subtle shift that I observed with a mother's watchful eye. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of activity for both the Walshes and for me. They planned an extravagant rehearsal dinner at the country club, a place Patricia frequently used to host her society events. Gordon made sure to point out to anyone who would listen how he had secured such prime real estate, hinting at his vast influence. Unbeknownst to him, my legal team was quietly, meticulously working behind the scenes. We initiated the acquisition of the expiring country club land lease and the purchase of the surrounding parcels. Simultaneously, Henderson Investment Properties, under the initial guidance of Sarah Mitchell and myself, began aggressively acquiring Gordon's vulnerable stakes in the Riverside Shopping Center development. We bought out his minor partners, secured options, and leveraged our cash position to gain significant control. We were like a silent financial tsunami, building momentum beneath the surface while the Walshes were preoccupied with tablecloths and canapes. The wedding day dawned bright and beautiful, a cruel irony given the storm that was about to break. The Walsh estate grounds were transformed into a veritable fairy tale dripping with flowers, silk, and sparkling crystal. I wore a simple, elegant navy blue dress, my grandmother's pearls shimmering softly at my throat. I felt calm, almost serene, despite the thrum of anticipation in my chest. Tyler, handsome in his tuxedo, looked nervous but determined. As I watched him stand at the altar, waiting for Jessica, I felt a surge of love so profound it almost buckled my knees. My boy. He deserved so much more than what these people were offering him. The procession began. Jessica, radiant and undoubtedly expensive, floated down the aisle on Gordon's arm. As she passed, her gaze flickered to me, a smirk playing on her lips. Then, Patricia leaned over to one of her friends in the front row, a whisper that carried clearly in the hushed silence of the outdoor ceremony. "That's not a mother," she scoffed, loud enough for me to hear, loud enough for Tyler's sensitive ears to catch the last remnants of her venom. "That's a mistaken address." Jessica, still floating past, heard it too. She actually laughed, a bright, tinkling sound devoid of warmth or compassion. My heart shattered for a split second. A mistake. My entire life, my quiet dedication, my profound love for my son, reduced to a mistake. But then I saw Tyler. He had heard. His jaw tightened. His eyes, fixed on Jessica just moments before, now darted to me, a flash of horror and then of fierce protectiveness. He saw my face, saw the quiet pain that I tried to mask, and in that instant, something shifted in him. He stopped, right there at the altar, before Jessica reached him. The music faltered. Everyone looked confused. Tyler took a deep breath, his chest heaving, and then, to the shock of every single person present, he walked away from the altar. He strode purposefully to the microphone stand that had been set up for the officiant. He grabbed it, his voice trembling at first, then growing strong, resolute. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice echoing across the stunned assembly. I cannot do this." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jessica froze, her perfect smile crumbling. "I cannot marry into a family," Tyler continued, looking directly at Jessica and then at Patricia and Gordon, "that consistently disrespects my mother, a family that sees her as a charity case, as a mistaken address." He looked at me, his eyes full of love and apology. "My mother is the kindest, most generous, most intelligent woman I know. She has sacrificed everything for me, and I refuse to stand by while she is treated with such contempt. This wedding is off." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by a few muffled sobs from Jessica and the enraged sputtering of Gordon Walsh. "Tyler! What is the meaning of this?" Gordon bellowed, red-faced, stepping forward. "You're throwing away a lifetime of opportunity. You're letting your small-town mother ruin everything for you." That was my cue. I stepped forward, calm and collected, my grandmother's pearls gleaming. I took the microphone gently from Tyler's hand. He looked at me, his eyes wide, a mixture of fear and admiration. I squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Gordon," I said, my voice clear and steady, amplified for every single guest to hear. You speak of ruin, you speak of opportunity. You speak of my small-town mother, as if it is an insult. I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the aghast faces of Patricia and Gordon, then to the tear-streaked, furious face of Jessica. What you fail to understand, Gordon, is that true power isn't about inherited wealth or ostentatious displays. It's about quiet strength, meticulous planning, and smart investments. I looked at the crowd, then back at the Walshes. My son, I continued, will not be throwing away any opportunities. Quite the opposite. As the managing partner of Henderson Investment Properties, he is about to embark on a very successful career, building a genuine legacy, not one built on debt and precarious leverage. I saw Gordon's eyes widen, confusion dawning, then alarm. Oh, you haven't heard of Henderson Investment Properties, have you, Gordon? Strange, considering how involved they've become in your empire lately. I let a small, knowing smile play on my lips. You see, Gordon, while you were boasting about your impressive stakes in the Riverside Shopping Center development, Henderson Investment Properties was quietly acquiring them. Every vulnerable share, every fractional ownership. As of this morning, Henderson Investment Properties, under Tyler's capable leadership, now holds a controlling interest in the Riverside Shopping Center. That lucrative project you so proudly boasted about, it's no longer yours to command. The color drained from Gordon's face. He looked like he'd been punched. Patricia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Jessica stared, aghast, her tears forgotten. And the country club, Patricia, I added, turning my gaze to her, where you so graciously host your events. Henderson Investment Properties recently acquired the land that it sits on, along with the expiring lease. I'm afraid your next charitable luncheon will need a new venue. A collective murmur rippled through the guests. Whispers of, "Who is she?" and "What just happened?" filled the air. Gordon started to bluster. "This is impossible. Fraud. You can't just—" "Oh, it's all perfectly legal, Gordon," I interjected, cutting him off smoothly. Every single transaction was above board, meticulously documented, and executed with utmost precision. We did our due diligence, something you apparently neglected to do on the small-town mother you so easily dismissed. Perhaps if you had bothered to learn my maiden name, you might have done a little more research, or at least shown a little more respect. The aftermath was exactly as I had planned, and yet surprisingly devoid of triumph on my part. The Walsh family's world crumbled with shocking speed. The public humiliation at the wedding became a local sensation, fueled by social media and hushed whispers. Gordon's creditors, now aware of his precarious financial situation and the loss of his key asset, called in their loans. His empire was revealed to be a fragile house of cards. The car dealerships faced bankruptcy, the restaurants struggled, and the Walsh estate, their symbol of grandeur, went on the market, then into foreclosure. Their social standing vanished faster than their money. Patricia's society events ceased. Jessica found herself unceremoniously dropped by her wealthy friends, her superficial charm now exposed for what it was. The relationship between Tyler and Jessica, of course, was irrevocably over. She tried, pathetically, to reach out to Tyler, to apologize, to somehow salvage her plummeting social status. But he was done. Tyler, my wonderful son, transformed. The initial shock wore off, replaced by a fierce determination. Under my guidance, he embraced his role as managing partner of Henderson Investment Properties. He learned quickly, absorbing every detail of the business, proving to be a natural. He was no longer the insecure young man swayed by perceived grandeur. He was confident, decisive, and independent. He worked tirelessly, building the company, overseeing the Riverside Shopping Center's success, and expanding into new, equally lucrative ventures. He even acquired a sleek, expensive German company car, a stark contrast to the dependent sales job Gordon had offered him. He had found his own worth, his own path, free from the manipulative shadows of the Walshes. As for me, I felt a deep sense of peace. Justice had been served, not with malice, but with a cold, calculated fairness. The Walshes had simply experienced the natural consequences of their own choices, their own greed. and their own profound lack of respect for others. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel a need for further confrontation. My mission was accomplished. Tyler was secure, empowered, and truly happy. That was all that mattered. I sold my modest house in Cedar Falls, feeling a lightness I hadn't realized I was missing. I bought a charming, smaller cottage by a serene lake, surrounded by trees and quiet. It was a place where I could truly relax, read my books, tend my small garden, and watch the sunset over the water. I still kept an eye on my investments, of course, but now it was purely for the joy of it, not out of a need to protect or to prove. I finally understood that true wealth wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, self-respect, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing you've built something real, something meaningful. It was about allowing others to reveal who they truly are, and then acting with integrity to ensure that goodness ultimately prevails. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.